People often ask me about, quote, the witness and about non-dual awareness. One of the difficulties in answering questions on these topics is that there's quite a bit of ambiguity as to what the words the witness or the phrase non-dual awareness should refer to. In other words, these words and phrases are used differently by different people. And so to give a sort of single answer to questions regarding these without taking into account the fact that the terms may mean different things to different people is the road to disaster, actually, gross misunderstanding, and possibly even contentious malaise. So one can use the word witness, I think, in two senses. One is the sense that there is a thing over here that's sort of observing the it's over there and in some way detached from the it's that are being observed. So there's one sense of witness. In that sense, witness is just a way of describing a certain level of equanimity. And from that perspective, yeah, that's a good thing to have that sense of I'm just witnessing. Stuff is, there's the phenomena are coming and going, and they can't get to me because I'm back here. I call that a distance-creating metaphor for equanimity. I should point out it's not the only metaphor for equanimity. You can also have a distance-collapsing metaphor, which is I'm so totally with the phenomena that it can't get to me because I'm like glued to it. But in any event, if we want to use the word witness in the sense of a metaphor for equanimity, that's fine. That is not at all, however, at the same level as witness in the sense of the absolute witness. When you have a sense that there's a sort of observer, a thing that's observing, or a person that's observing, but sort of separate and detached. That's good because it's equanimity, but it's also important to realize that that's being produced by subtle feel image talk. So I wouldn't say that that's the absolute witness or pure consciousness. But it's a good thing. It's a stage that people go through. However, it's of the utmost importance that a person not get stuck in that stage and think, oh, well, this is like the ultimate goal of things. So then what is the true witness? In my way of thinking, the true witness is contentless consciousness that in my system you directly eyeball for just a brief second every time you observe a phenomenon disappearing. In other words, whenever any phenomenon disappears, what is actually happening is that the two forces that are molding that phenomenon, you can call them life and death, or affirmation, negation, or expansion and contraction, or a whole lot of other things. The two forces that have molded that phenomenon cancel out, and there is a cessation, nirodha, a collapsing or disappearing of time-space for, quote, a fraction of a second. That's, of course, a time metaphor, right? By an external clock for a fraction of a second. there's a little puncture in the time-space continuum. Of course, that little puncture eats up all of time and space. It's the black hole that sort of eats up the universe and then spits it out again in the next moment of consciousness. My teacher, Sasaki Roshi, calls that zero. That's what I would call the true witness. But the true witness doesn't see anything, and it's not back here somewhere, because there is no back, there is no forward, there is no extension in time and space. It eats up time and space. It's not inside time and space. And when you become the true witness, there's no sense of witnessing anything, any phenomenon. There's no sense of anything. It's contentless consciousness. It's nothing whatsoever. Now, some people wouldn't call that the witness. Some people would just call that emptiness, or the source, or cessation, a nirodha, a moment of cessation. If you had to say there's a witness, that's what, as in an absolute sense, that's what I would point to. And that witness punctures the time-space continuum thousands and thousands and thousands of times every day for everyone. The only difference between the so-called enlightened people and everybody else is they notice it, and they know that they are that nothing. If you read in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali, the classic text of Raja Yoga, he begins the Yoga Sutras by saying, Atta yoganushasanam yogas chitta vritti nirodha tadadrashtu swarupe vasthanam. So, Atta yoganushasanam, okay, this is the science of yoga. Yoga is chitta vritti nirodha, the cessation, nirodha, the cessation of the fluctuations of consciousness. Then and only then does the drishti, the true observer, abide in its nature. So if we wanted to call that nothingness, that very special nothingness, the true observer, we could. But that's very different from the sense of there's somebody back here detached watching things. In order to go from there's somebody back here detached watching things to the experience of cessation, you have to be able to detect the disappearance of the subtle feel, image, talk that creates the sense that there's any thing or person extended in time and space or positioned in any location. You have to see the disappearance of the subtle feel, image, talk that creates that impression. And the place where that relative witness disappears to is the place of the absolute witness.